The fate of two teenagers who helped plan the killings at the Bethel High School has been decided. James Randall will serve 2 years at a youth detention center in Bethel, and Matthew Charles has been released into his parents' custody. Both were 14 when they helped Evan Ramsey sneak a gun into the school just as classes started on a winter morning almost 2 years ago. It was Randall who taught Ramsey how to fire the weapon, and it was Charles' job to photograph the showdown, but the boy was too stunned to snap pictures when Ramsey opened fire in the lobby, gunning down a fellow student, then the principal. Students ran in terror as Ramsey prowled the hallways, firing at the ceiling and lockers. For many, the nightmare came to an end last week when Ramsey, now 18, was sentenced to 210 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole when he is 70 years old. Ramsey's attorney says he will appeal the case because the jury wasn't allowed to hear about the abuse and neglect he suffered during his childhood. This week we began a 5-part series looking at Ramsey's family history. As Rhonda McBride reports, that story has attracted national attention.
There was hardly room for the technicians to move in the maze of lights and cables that sprawled across a Captain Cook hotel suite this weekend, looking almost as tangled as the story to be unraveled.
This is rule number 23, 60 Minutes, second edition. We're in Anchorage, Alaska. This is Story Slug Fame and Fortune interview with Mr. Ramsey and William Ramsey.
The producer of the segment says Fame and Fortune is just the working title. But at least for now, the fame part of the title seems oddly apropos. Sometime in January, the whole country will hear the Ramsey family saga.
Being interviewed by 60 Minutes is sort of overwhelming for a cab driver, from Anchorage, Alaska.
It's been 12 years since Don Ramsey drove a cab. Not since the day in October 1986 when he stormed the Anchorage Times newspaper office with guns and smoke bombs. The newspaper publisher wrestled Ramsey to the ground before anyone got hurt, so Ramsey did time for assault instead of murder. Just a few days before his son staged his own showdown, the father called to let his son know that he had been released from prison. He had lost touch with the boy and his 2 brothers, John and William, who under their alcoholic mother's care fell prey to violent boyfriends and in later years to abusive foster homes. 60 Minutes reporter Carol Marine says she hopes the Ramsey story will help explain the other 6 school shootings.
I'm struck by the complexity, the sort of dominoes, that if you took one domino out, maybe you wouldn't have had this shooting. If Evan had not had the family situation that he had, if he hadn't had the foster care situation that he had, if he hadn't met the 2 14-year-olds or been influenced by them, if some child had told. There are all of those what-ifs that you say to yourself, so many little pieces of this story created a kind of critical mass that sort of assembled the tinder for this fire.
The nation is a long ways off from reaching a critical mass when it comes to understanding why children kill. That's what the author of Ghosts from the Nursery says. In her groundbreaking book, therapist Robin Carr Moore says, as a society, we tend to focus on the sensationalism of crime.
When we understand the continuum that's in place for most of the people who are currently in our jails or prisons, when we trace that back through adolescence, through grade school, through early development, through pregnancy and birth and earliest infancy and toddlerhood, we begin to understand that in reality, there but for the grace of God go any of us.
In the Ramsey case, it's hard to pinpoint what tripped the first domino. Don Ramsey says before he snapped and launched his attack on the Anchorage Times office, Evan was part of a loving family. Ramsey is in the process of putting a collection of songs, poems, prayers, and pictures together to help Evan live out his sentence. One of those photos was taken at Christmas when Evan was 4 years old. He's dressed in Superman pajamas and also wears an earnest, sweet smile.
You ought to have seen him when he put that Superman pajamas on. He'd hop around like he was trying to fly and stuff, A little skinny kid, little bony butt, sitting there trying to make a muscle, trying to roll a bicep up and stuff, It's a piece of Superman in all of us. Just like there's a piece of Superman that wants to go smash the 250-pound bully that's been pumping iron all of his life. Most people either want to be Superman or an Arnold Schwarzenegger. They want to be the savior of the human race, or they want to be the destroyer of the human race.
So at what point in Ivan's life did the fantasy morph from hero to villain? Was it when he was choked by one of his mother's violent boyfriends, or when he was beaten with bungee cords in an abusive foster home? Dr. Leslie Nyman at Charter North Hospital in Anchorage has treated many violent children like Ivan.
Where is that point when someone has that inner dialogue that one can kill another? That's almost a literary question. I think that's the stuff that good novels are made of. I don't know exactly where that point is with him, but I think a common thread that runs through these people is that other individuals become essentially cardboard cutouts.
Nyman says from violent movies to video games, our culture is steeped in violence. So it shouldn't be surprising that children are the most rapid growing segment of the criminal population. 60 Minutes reporter Carol Marine hopes that the Ramsey story can bring attention to this issue.
I think everything that happens in society makes a statement about us. I think that the criminals we produce makes a statement about us. I think the heroes we produce makes a statement about us.
Now Ivan Ramsey faces a life of isolation. One has to wonder what he will see when he looks at the snapshot of that smiling boy in the Superman pajamas.
Yeah, I hope that he can still see that there's some good in him. Because at times, it bothers him because some people think that he's some kind of a monster or something like that. And I tell them that may well be, but you weren't born that way, you were created.
Don Ramsey says his inability to control his violent emotions played a role in the sad human drama, but he also says it's too simplistic to cast him as the villain, and also lets too many others off the hook. Rhonda McBride, APRN, Anchorage.